Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And we are two artists reaching into the pile of...
You could say, well, today it's going to be comics and comic book movies, but it can be television shows. It probably won't be books because you don't read.
Yeah, I read. I've read.
But basically any sort of storytelling medium that moves you. Anything that's worth keeping on your shelf. And that can be literally or physically, or that can be spiritually. Just something to take with you.
Yeah. And today we're going to talk about, we're returning to the podcast world. Sorry, we've been on a summer break, but we are back now, and we're back to talk about the MCU being back. We're here to talk about the Fox universe being back. We're talking about
back in a matter of perspective, because you know the whole like meme of like MCU is dead, MCU is back, MCU is dead. I have friends that I know who have been like, oh man, I haven't liked a movie basically since Endgame. I'm like, Guardians Volume 3 came out last year. You saw it. You loved it.
You saw it. We all saw it. And it was great. Like,
you said the same thing when No Way Home came out.
It's every year. I think I was saying it before. It's like it's the difference between Marvel comic book fans and Marvel movie fans is that Marvel comic fans just read what they like. You know, and then they're like, wow, the Marvel universe is doing so well, you know, like, but then there's the MCU fans, and they just watch whatever they put out, and they're mad when it's not for them. And you're kind of like, guys, the Marvel universe is big, huge. Some things are not for you, you know, like that's just the reality of it, is that some comics are not written for you. And guess what? You don't have to read them. You don't have to buy them. And that's, I think, you know, sort of what's going on with the MCU is that they feel like they have to watch something, and when it's really not made for them or their general audience, you know.
And it's like, also that old adage of like people don't know what they want until they get it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Expanded upon. Like I've seen like we had just had SDCC roll by, so there were a bunch of trailers and stuff. We just got like the first reveal for Creature Commandos, which is like the first proper installment for like this new DCU under James Gunn on like the movie and TV side. And it's so funny seeing people be like, who the fuck are these guys?
Who the fuck are these guys?
It's just like, what, you guys acting like you knew who the Guardians were before James Gunn tackled them? Come on.
Exactly. It's
also the same thing of just, I had this huge ramble because, thank you, Facebook Memories. It was showing me reading Demon Knights from when we were in college. I'm like, Demon Knights, what a great book that no one fucking read. Just like all the other really good New 52 books that no one fucking read, and then proceeded to complain that there were too many Bat books.
Yeah, it's exactly that, is that there is great stuff, and you just need to choose what you like instead of being mad about what you don't and what isn't made for you, you know, like, and I feel like that creates that like MCU's dead, MCU's back feeling that happens every year, because they're, you know,
why can't they make new original things? New original thing comes out. What is that? I don't recognize anyone in it. I'll just wait for streaming.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, I'll wait for it to come out. It's like, I feel like that's going to keep happening as we expand into more and more of the Marvel and the DC universe. I feel like we're going to sort of hit that with Thunderbolts, is that like Thunderbolt, we got some stuff, some SDCC for Thunderbolts. And I feel like that's a team that no one who hasn't read comics knows about. But then they'll see that it has the MCU people and they'll be happy. But like, as Thunderbolts fans, you're like, this isn't the right Thunderbolts roster. This is stupid. Like, you're like, where's my Red Hulk?
This is all just like the scraps from like the espionage stuff. All these people do the same thing. Where's Ghost Rider? Where's Punisher?
Exactly. It's like Thunderbolts was always supposed to be like the edgy Avengers, you know, like, you know, or not just the dark Avengers. They were just supposed to be like the edge of the universe.
It's basically the Marvel Knights team.
Yeah, right.
Back when Marvel Knights was an imprint.
Exactly. And I think that I'm cool with them bringing that kind of feel to it, but I have big doubts with them just being like, oh, here's all the parts from the rest of the MC universe that we can't fit in anywhere, but we want to keep using. Let's throw them into Thunderbolts. And you're just like,
yeah. I mean, originally they were going to have Ghost. You're like, hey guys, you remember Ghost? You got Ghost, guys, from Ant-Man and the Wasp? You remember Ghost, right?
Yeah. Everyone remembers that. And you're like, no one gives a shit about Ant-Man and Wasp. Like, just a bad one. Like, like you're just like, damn. But today we're talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, or Wolverine and Deadpool if you're nasty. And I think that it's one of those movies that will make you feel good leaving the theater. I feel like that's the number one thing I want to say about Deadpool and Wolverine, is that you, as a Marvel fan, as a Fox fan, you will, as a general superhero fan, you will walk out feeling good after this.
Mhm.
Is it supposed to be some deep endgame like movie? No, this is supposed to be a fun summer blockbuster, and I think it nails that. I think that this pretty much nails that summer blockbustery feel where you don't have to put in a lot of thought to it. You're just having a good time, because
Yeah.
if you try to get deep on this movie, which we'll kind of nitpick this movie as we go along, I don't know if it's the strongest, Marvel entry or anything like that, but I felt good leaving it. It was a good time. It wish fulfilled for a lot of people. I feel like there's a lot of wish fulfillment going on in this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For sure, a lot of fan service. But
Mhm.
I do want to say I think this is the best Deadpool movie. I think out of the three, this is I think leaps and bounds better than the first two, and I think the first two people love. Like,
I do really like the first Deadpool movie still. I mean, enough to own a nice steelbook of it.
Nice. It is good. I'm not saying it's bad.
It is.
I'm just saying
this is a film that excels on what was very simple means. Like, Fox clearly didn't throw a lot of money at them, but you get a director like Tim Miller, whose background was in like VFX, and you can make it look a lot bigger than it was. It's humble, but it works, and it actually has like a lot of love for the character and the aesthetic. Yeah. Deadpool 2 is one that's like waned on me more and more over time, even having rewatched it recently, because I went through all like the Fox X-Men movies.
I think
again leading up to X-Men 97.
I think Deadpool 2 is it's just too, it's fun in clips. I feel like the movie is fun when you see clips of it and you're like, wow, that's a fun movie, but then when you sit down and watch it, you're kind of like, that's not so great.
It's like, it's like two steps away from like a Men in Black 2 style sequel. Deadpool 1 felt like it was a parody of superhero movies. Deadpool 2 just feels like it's a parody of Deadpool 1.
Yeah. And that's kind of like,
plus I don't like annoying kid tag-alongs. I hate that they fridge Vanessa.
Yeah.
Like, I put out a post that the way Colossus looks as a character from the first movie to the second movie could be a metaphor for the two movies.
Yes.
In the first one, there's like this great attention to detail with the CGI. Like, you have like oxidation and rust and like dents in his skin to like give it that sort of tangibility and a sense of age. Yes. And then in Deadpool 2, he's just kind of smooth and chrome. Just like, that's a metaphor for the entire movie.
that pretty much sums it up. So it's like, I went into this without, it's like, yes, I was excited to see, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I was very excited, but I went in with kind of low expectations because I feel like Deadpool 2 kind of lowered it for me, where I went in being like, is it going to be kind of cringe? And I hate to use that word, but like, Deadpool 2 is kind of cringe in a lot of ways. That keep that going. And I feel like they were actually able to make it more comic booky than the first two Deadpool movies have ever been, like where it just feels like a fun adventure that you're picking up and reading, and it just like combines all your favorite characters and has these fun moments.
That was another case against Deadpool 2, because Deadpool 1, especially for its time, where like the X-Men movies were still like, oh, we don't want to get too comic booky, was still pretty like, hey, here's the traditional costume. What if we just have Colossus look like Colossus? What if we just do Deadpool's costume and we don't make any bones about it? And then even Deadpool 2, it kind of walked back on that. Just like, well, we don't want Cable to really look like Cable too much. We got to ground it.
Too much. Like, and you're just like, come on. Like, and I feel like here, they lean into let's make this as comic book accurate ? As possible, because it's not like you know, the TVA, yes, it's in the comics, but like that is very much like an MCU thing that they have like leaned into and have expanded upon. And I do think it's funny that like Deadpool is so connected with the Loki show at this point. You're just like, that's strange, you know, like in a cool way. And I do feel like that they are able to here capture that comic book feel with a lot of characters here. So guys, you can't really talk about this movie without talking about spoilers. So I'm going to say that right now is that, you know, basically summed it up. This is it's a movie that tries to have stakes, doesn't have it per se, but is a fun movie. You know, like you know, like I feel like that's my big hurdle for this movie is the stakes. I feel like we have finally hit the fucking wall on stakes. And by that I mean like, oh yes, if they don't do this, the universe falls apart, or you know, we're deleting a world. We've done that in Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, Loki. We've done it in a lot of. It's kind of like it's the new stake is not just like, oh, this person could die, this person could die. It's the whole fucking universe will disappear, and they've kind of like hit that stake, and they can't go beyond that. And that's my like main problem with this movie is it's kind of doing the same stakes as a lot of, you know, recent movies that they've done where it's like, oh no, if we don't fix this, the whole universe will delete. And like, that's, yes, it's the ultimate stakes, but when you use it so often, it feels tired, you know, like
I only slightly disagree, but I can't get into why until we get talk spoilers.
Yeah. So that's my thought is like great blockbuster movie, lots of fun. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, perfect. They're
good time.
pudding,
and
you know?
A big thing that I can say without getting into spoilers is, as someone who is cautious about the idea of this movie just because Logan was such a great send-off for Hugh Jackman, while it's not a better send-off than Logan was, I see it as like an optional coda if you want it.
Yes, exactly. I think that this is a lot of fun. You should go see it. You should see it at the biggest screen possible, especially if you're a Marvel fan. But yes, let's talk spoilers, because I feel like that's kind of the hard part about this movie, that even the trailers, you know, trying to show things off of the trailers, you would spoil things, you know, like, and they you know, they tried really hard not to.
And the trailers were pretty good about like hiding their cards until the very end, when they had, and I didn't even watch the final trailer until after I'd already seen the movie, because I had said that like, oh, they kind of have a thing there that they probably should have just not done. Since we're in spoiler territory now. They mostly kept it to like, it's going to be Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
It looks like we're in the void from Loki. That's about it. We see the TVA. But then by the time we get to the final trailer, they're like showing Laura at the end. You're like, come on.
Bro. Yeah, I feel like them showing off Cassandra Nova, you're like, okay, that's fair. She's never been in anything else before, so they're showing that off. You know, like...
And we also, it establishes, like, we didn't know who the villain of this was going to be, so there's one.
Yeah, and it's funny because she's not the villain of this. She's kind of just a villain that is there, not really the villain of this, because the real villain of this movie is Paradox, which I thought was quite interesting, actually. That like,
yeah, because he's essentially a giant metaphor for Disney exec.
Yeah, right. Just stepping in and be like, we're gonna delete that.
The reason why I slightly disagree with the point of like the stakes not being high, and while you could argue it only works in like a metaphorical standpoint, is that this whole thing, and what I really like about it, is that you go into Deadpool and Wolverine and people have the expectations, basically the same expectations they have a Multiverse of Madness, where they just want a bunch of fan theory shit.
Yeah.
Just like, oh man, we're going to see Tom Cruise Iron Man. It's going to be nuts.
I feel like this movie did all the things that the fans thought Multiverse of Madness was gonna do. Like Multiverse of Madness, they were like, "Oh, there's gonna be Tom Cruise, Iron Man," and here they're like, "Yo, there's really Henry Cavill Wolverine in this movie. We have him." You know, like we already said spoilers, and that's so like, but like,
that's
come
like
on,
a
that's
quick thing. It's
wild.
Cool, but that's also kind of the equivalent of like the John Krasinski, Reed Richards. Like it was a popular fan cast that people would always bring up, so that's fine. But what I like about what we ultimately do with like the characters that we bring in is that it's all underdog stuff from like the
Yes.
Fox movies no one cares about anymore. In Blade's case, it's New Line Cinema, like all that stuff that like we don't give any credit anymore in a post MCU world.
Yes.
And I love that whole cast of characters is more about the underdogs, because Wade himself being a part of the Fox universe and opening with the idea of him trying to be with the MCU, and Happy Hogan being like, nah.
Yeah, nah.
Also puts him in that position where he's just like, oh, damn, I don't like to be treated like shit. I can only imagine how these guys feel. Yeah, not all their movies were good. In fact, some of the people here never had good movies, or only had the idea of a movie that never actually came to fruition. But you know what? We matter too.
Yeah, we matter too. I do think, to go more into the stakes thing, I do think it's a major problem for this movie, because you have two characters who are unkillable. You know, you have Wolverine, you have Deadpool. Like, that is kind of their whole thing. You can't fucking kill them. So the stakes there are already like, shoot, you can't kill these characters. And then you're trying to end the universe, you know, like, which is, I just feel like the stakes are really high, but not really at the same time, you know, like, and I feel like that's sort of my kind of problem with this movie, is I feel like the stakes are kind of all over the place, you know, like, and you're just like, when they're like, oh man, only one person can hold the antimatter and the matter at the end there, you're kind of like, yeah, but, you know, like, it's kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, they'll die at the end. You're like, yeah, but, you know, you're like, come on, it's Deadpool Wolverine. We know they're not gonna die, you know, like there's nothing's gonna happen, you know, like, and that is,
although that borders on just kind of main character privilege in general.
Yes, but they kind of even address it.
But I do understand what you mean. Just like you have like, it was already bad enough with one unkillable character as the lead, and now you have two with double billing. So,
which is, it's kind of the fun of it, is that they can't kill each other, but they hate each other. So like, that's the fun of them like fighting each other, is that's always been the fun, you know, like, is that Wolverine can't die and neither can Deadpool. And like, that is the fun dynamic going on. But I do feel like for a movie, it does ruin the stakes a little, you know, like, it's just kind of like, oh no, they're fine, you know, like, they're good. It was funny.
Yeah, which is already sort of, an ongoing problem that's going to be happening the more they like sink their teeth into the multiverse shenanigans, is that it also already ruins stakes in its own respect, when if you kill a character off, your excuse is just like, we could just whatever, we could just grab another one from another universe,
grab another variant, which they kind of do here. They're like, they start off by being like, Logan is the body he's desecrating at the beginning, so Logan is dead, you know, like the Logan you know is gone. We're just gonna go find another replacement, you know, like, and that's kind of the whole premise of this movie, is they're like, oh, the anchor being, which I actually really love that concept of the anchor being for a universe. I think that's fun.
It doesn't like, I think it works as a metaphor for the Fox X-Men films falling apart after Jackman left. But as an actual like universe thing, it makes no sense. Because guess what? Everyone dies eventually.
Yeah, right. So it like, what, the universe just dies after this one person goes away, you know, like, you're like, wait, this only really applies to Logan.
Oh man,
you know?
this Logan in this universe like briefly lost his healing factor a la the Wolverine and accidentally slipped in the shower, so this universe is falling apart.
This universe is fucked. Exactly. You're just like, it's like, I like the idea of it, but if you try to dig into it, it's kind of this whole movie is that like, the ideas
there's
are
a
fun,
lot of like,
but if you dig
metatextual
into it at all,
stuff here,
it's like, I think that's the thing, is you kind of have to turn the stakes, the brain off a little, and just have a good time with this movie, because you will, you know, like, it's right from the beginning. Deadpool dancing to is it Backstreet Boys or NSYNC? I can't remember.
Whatever.
It's Bye Bye Bye. I think it's Backstreet Boys, and like and I love that opening. I think that was great. And like, using Logan's skeleton is pretty fucking wild. It's just kind of being like, welcome. This is going to be a bloody, disgusting, irreverent
movie that does not care about your sappy endings.
Yeah, right.
Does not care that you cried at the end of Logan.
does not care if you watch black and white Logan. No, it does not matter. But I think that that's kind of like the genius there is you're kind of like, okay, like we're in it now, you know, like this is happening. And I really did love Deadpool kind of using the TVA like technology to visit all the other Wolverines. That was
I mean,
fucking hilarious.
They inadvertently gave themselves the perfect opening to jump into the MCU just based on the way Deadpool 2 ended.
Yeah, right. Like they were like,
which was, you know, whatever, time travel shenanigans, but then it kind of gave them the perfect unintentional bridge.
Yes. Which you're like, okay, all right. And I feel like...
And I like the idea that, like, Wade already went to the MCU, and it was just like, I'm here, guys. Come on, let me join. And they're just like, no.
No, get out.
And he just he's just like, well, I have no purpose now. Because even Wade himself is like sort of drinking the Kool-Aid of like, my universe is worthless. Everyone wants to be part of the Disney universe. No one cares about these Fox movies anymore. I want to be part of the MCU. And it's sort of being that metafictional like lesson of like, no, those movies matter too. Those are stepping stones to get here.
And I feel like one of the biggest meta things that like has already happened in Loki, but they talk about this sacred timeline, you know, like, and like there is, but like I think that's the best meta thing going on, because like you're basically being like what Disney believes to be canon, that's the sacred timeline, and then like everyone else can play with whatever they want, you know, like, and kind of do whatever they want as long as it's not touching the sacred timeline, you know, like, and I do like
that's Paradox's whole thing. Just like, oh, we like you, but we don't want your baggage.
Right, we don't want that. Like, I do.
You
like
can
that,
come, but everything else, erased. We don't need it. It's not making a profit. We don't do those anymore. Fox is gone.
The one piece of genius, other than that, is the showing Deadpool being held by Thor and Thor's crying about Deadpool dying. That like he sees that little clip and it like motivates him to try to like save everything, you know, like, and I think that that's kind of a fun little thing where you could have done it at the end of this movie, like Thor, you know, crying and holding him, but to kind of hold off and not use that is kind of cool, you know, like it's you're like, okay, like
to be like, okay, seed maybe for later,
seed maybe. I do like that. You're like, okay, that's fun, you know, like that's some fun like Easter eggs for later, because I feel like that's the one thing that, you know, the Marvel heads will not like about this movie is a lot of Marvel heads love that universe building, that one little bit that will play somewhere else, you know, like that will happen in some other movie. That's not what's happening here. You know, everything is just like brought up and wiped out, you know, like brought up, wiped out. And like, that's okay. You know, like that means it actually happened, you know, instead of being like, it's fine, just move on, you know, like it's just like, okay, I like that, you know, like there's some consequences here, you know, like there, you know, the stakes of the actual plot are not great, but like there's consequences, you know, like, because there's, you know, the Fox characters kind of dying often here, you know, like kind of getting wiped out. So, but I think that I think the movie does a great job of just having fun with everything that's going on. I mean, the Wolverine using the TVA portals to like visit all the Wolverines was great. Just too much fun.
That was so much fun. Like even beyond the Cavill thing, that was fun. I loved seeing the John Byrne like brown suit.
Right.
That's always been my favorite too. So I was kind of upset that we went away from like, wait, no, go back.
And then to get it,
I like seeing the fucking Wolverine on the X surrounded by skulls. That's a very famous X-Men cover.
That was
I love seeing the Age of Apocalypse one with like the scraggly hair and like and like missing a hand.
Yeah. And the a short
comic
Wolverine
accurate
fucking
short. Oh, so funny.
That was so funny.
Already seeing it make the rounds, just like use this image the next time people complain about Hugh Jackman's height.
Yeah, right? You're just like, no. You're just like, no, this is the height you think, and it's not great, you know, like it's not doesn't make any sense, you know. You're just like, that's okay. But I think that they, you know, they go from there to being like, you know, what do we do from that, you know, like, and I feel like they're able to keep it fun and moving, that like, you know, like they you know, go into the void and they're like fighting in the void. And I think that that's kind of fun, you know, like is to use an MCU location from Loki and like kind of expand on it and have some fun with it, because Loki does small
Yeah.
things with it, and I think that there's a lot more, and they were able to show off a lot more.
And there's also nothing in here that contradicts either season of Loki, because I know you still haven't seen Loki season 2. I've
seen part of it, but not all of it. Yeah.
Loki season 2, a bit slow in the middle, but I really liked it more than the first season.
Really? Okay.
And there's nothing in here that actively contradicts that, which is nice.
That is nice.
So it's still, so like, spoiler for Loki season 2, I guess. The way that like culminates is, rather than having the TVA sort of like erase things willy-nilly in order to keep like the singular branch and making sure nothing branches off, instead the timelines sort of become like a representation of Yggdrasil, where it's just like, no, instead of trying to divert these branches and clip them, we just need someone at the center to hold them together like a great tree. And that basically is what Loki becomes.
Yes,
he basically becomes like a god of the timelines,
which
as
is
like
cool.
as sort of like a watcher to like hold it all together.
Yeah, I like that. I will say there's one thing about the Void that I did not like, and I think it's kind of a stupid part about this movie, is the Mad Max joke hits once, you know, like that they drive up in the Mad Max stuff, but they kind of keep the Mad Max theme and look going throughout the whole thing, and like I think it's a joke that hits that one time when they pull up, you know, like in the Mad Max stuff, and I don't think it works beyond that. And I think that that's kind of my like one other than the stakes is my one other big gripe about this movie, is that so they use the Mad Max aesthetic as a joke, then they keep using it, and then at the end, when we have all these great characters, like, you know, like you have all these villains that we could be fighting, and you know, from the Fox universe, and instead Blade, Elektra, Gambit, everybody's fighting kind of like nondescript Mad Max characters, and I don't give a fuck, you know, like that's my problem with that whole thing, is like, yes, seeing them fight Toad, epic, you know, like seeing them fight who's the demon guy that poofs like
Azazel.
Yeah, Azazel. It's like, it's so cool to like see them back and fighting, but they're like maybe one or two of the fight scene, and it just kind of goes back to nondescript.
Even like the Sabretooth thing is done as like an anticlimax joke.
Yeah, where they're like, oh, people have been waiting for this for 20 years.
Just like, oh damn, we brought back Tyler Mane. We haven't seen him since the first X-Men movie, and only to just kill him off immediately.
I know, it's like fun, like that's funny, but like and feels very Deadpool, but it also is very like, you know, like.
But it also shows like this film's limitations. Just like, oh, we clearly also couldn't get everyone back either.
Yeah,
like we got Pyro's actor back, we got Ray Park back as Toad, we got Tyler Mane back as Sabretooth. That ain't Kelly Hu playing Deathstrike.
No. I thought
like, that's
that
not
too.
Vinnie Jones playing Juggernaut.
Yeah, I was like, ugh, I know, that was sort of weird. I was like, that's not right. I
wonder what even the same way with it still works, because the entire team is supposed to be like the scraps, or like the movies that we've kind of forgotten, or in Gambit's case, the movie that thankfully never happened.
So I mean, yeah, I and like that's my thing, is like I want to see them in action doing cool things again.
But I do wonder I wonder who they originally intended to be in that team. Because there is no way they wanted Elektra first. You know, they wanted Affleck's Daredevil before they're just like, well, Affleck doesn't want to do it.
Like, they were like, that's why they made the joke. They were like, you could tell they asked Affleck, and he was probably like, nah, I'm dealing with shit, and then just left him be, which is fair, you know. Like, you're like, nah, bringing like that would be wild to be like Deadpool, and it's Ben Affleck. Deadpool.
But I wonder like who else was it, because that's one of those things where like that shifts a bunch based on like who you can get. So I wonder like original draft, like, oh, we had a dream, we're gonna make this movie. Like what version of that team looks like.
It's true. I do like the team at the end. I think it's cool to see Blade. I think it's cool to see Wesley Snipes as Blade again. Yeah, Elektra's a weird choice, but it like feels right, you know, like where it's just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
no one
funny.
gave a shit. It's funny, you know, like it's great. I will
Um,
say Channing Tatum as Gambit, it's one of those things that we've dreamed about for years. It was supposed to happen, like it was.
Speak
And
for
it's one of those
yourself.
yeah, well, it's like, well, I wanted to see Gambit. I didn't care about Channing Tatum until he
Yeah.
talked. I was really impressed with that accent. I thought it was going to be way worse, and it was actually pretty good, I thought. What you think?
Didn't like it.
No, I thought it
Nope.
was good. I
didn't
thought
buy
it
it.
surprisingly.
It's not necessarily a bad representation of a Cajun accent, because a Cajun accent is tricky.
Yes, it is.
It is this interesting like hybridization of like a Southern accent and you could even say Southern accent. There are a lot of Southern dialects and like French, and it is
Yes.
really hard to pull off.
Yes.
In fact, I've heard like people who are like from that area talk about how like there's only been a few like even Gambit voice actors that have really nailed it.
Yeah.
They mostly say like, oh, Chris Potter specifically from the 90s cartoon does a pretty good job. Other people are kind of so.
I don't know. I felt like he was pretty decent here, though.
I just don't buy it.
It's like it shouldn't be coming out of his mouth.
Yeah,
sort
the
of
accent
thing.
isn't necessarily like isn't necessarily bad. I just don't buy the performance at all. Just like it seems like an actor trying to be Gambit.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do think seeing him do it makes you be like, so that's why they didn't do a full movie with just Gambit and Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
Like you're like, it's fun to see this. It's fun to see him in the costume. Costume looks great. I'll give all the credit there. Costume looks fucking awesome. And he moves amazing. Like I feel like Channing Tatum as Gambit moving around, fighting, looks and feels amazing.
And they understood the power set this time around, which is more than I can say for like Taylor Kitsch and X-Men Origins.
Yeah, and you're just like,
But it's just like, it's like nothing about Channing Tatum's like work convinced me that he would be a good Gambit, and this did not convince me either. Actually, having seen it, I'm like, despite Lauren Schuler Donner for years trying to threaten him being Gambit ever since like X-Men 2, and it just never got off the ground. Just like, I'm glad that never happened. Although I do love the joke that like Gambit's just like, we all ended up in the void, and Gambit's just like, I don't know, I think I was born here.
And I like that. Like the void is kind of this creative space that like, some ideas go to just drift around in, like I kind of like that. I don't know. I kind of like the accent, but I wouldn't want a whole movie. It's like I would have loved Gambit being on an X-Men team, Channing Tatum Gambit being on an X-Men team and just like being there, or even if he just showed up in Wolverine Origins or something like that, because he was supposed to. That was like one of those things where he was supposed to be in Wolverine Origins and it never happened. And like, I mean, that movie's fucking garbage, but like
it's X-Men and again I have to emphasize because people always get the name wrong. It's X-Men Origins Wolverine, not Wolverine
X-Men
Origins.
You're right, you're correct. They didn't have the balls to just call it Wolverine. They were like, no, nobody knows what a Wolverine is, everyone knows what an X-Men is.
Well, it was less that and more like X-Men Origins was supposed to be its own sub-brand. Like it's supposed to be like X-Men Origins Wolverine, X-Men Origins Magneto, and most of that script got repurposed for First Class, which is why Magneto's the best part of First Class.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just like they've been taking these ideas and shaping them into something else for a very long time. I don't know. I would have liked to see him in something else, but at the same time, I like that it happened here. I got to see it. It felt like something special, to see the Channing Tatum as
the real unexpected one was Blade. I would have ruled that out.
Yeah, right.
Mostly because, especially specifically for a Deadpool movie, because it is very well known, Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds didn't really like each other on the set of Blade 3.
Really? Yes. I have heard that where they like
Blade 3 1 is not good, but it had a very tumultuous production.
Yes. Yeah. And it sounded,
and that mostly came down to to be honest, Wesley Snipes at that point in his career kind of being a prima donna.
Yeah. I do. I
Like,
do
had
like
no
him
respect
being
for
here.
David Goyer as a director compared to like Stephen Norrington for the first one or Guillermo del Toro for the second movie.
Yeah.
And like Ryan Reynolds said, like most of the time he didn't even act like with Wesley. He was mostly acting with like his double.
Ah, that's crazy.
Like it got bad. So I didn't think they'd be able to like just squash the beef for him to actually show up. So I kind of ruled that out. And plus Wesley Snipes still acts, but he seemed like, as far as like action stuff is concerned,
yeah, he was like
the man is middle-aged. He can't do all that shit anymore.
Yeah, I think he did a great job here. I think,
But it was
he's
cool
able
seeing
to
him.
show it off.
Although he looks so naked without his coat. I mean, where's his coat? Where's his sword?
That's true. That's true. I feel that.
The outfit was fine. It kind of looked like the other outfits he wore underneath his coat in his own movies. I'm like, where's his coat?
Yeah, where's his coat? One thing I will say about that team, I did like Laura being there. I think that's like a great emotional like connection to Logan, and actually has like a great ending to Logan in some ways. But why did we not see her claws come out? Like, so they have the whole fight,
came out.
but no, they're out. Why did we not have a close-up of them coming out? Why did we not have a good shot of her fighting with them? It's just like they kind of do it and then they don't show you it. And I know it's not like important, but it's like it's kind of the whole thing is that her claws are different than Logan's. And like you could show that off and have fun with that. And I felt like they just didn't show off her. Like you saw her fighting and you know, scratch people up, but like no close-ups of her claws or anything.
It makes her feel like just kind of like the background ensemble on this team, as opposed to arguably the most important person here.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like that was sort of the issue there, is you're like, because she fixes everything, you know, like she's the one who throws the helmet, so she's like she's integral to the battle. She's the only one who does something important, you know, like, and it's still like, why are we not playing her up more? You know, like, why are we not using her? I feel like that was the sort of weird thing going on there. I was like, but I do think one thing that I will say, I was complaining about the Mad Max, you know, fighting sequences, but I will say the action in this movie is pretty top notch. I do think it's, I think that's the one thing you can really credit this movie with, is the action is pretty fantastic. Like,
yeah, it's pretty impressive, which is good, because that was like one of Deadpool 2's problems. Like it had solid set pieces, but you didn't have someone like Tim Miller working on it, whose background was in VFX, so he made it look really good. You had David Leitch instead, who was one of the co-directors for the first John Wick. So like the choreography was good, but as far as the VFX were concerned, that's where it got a little wonky.
That's where it fell apart. But
here I feel like it's kind of a good medium.
I feel like the Deadpool Wolverine fight that they fight in the minivan, I feel like that's a great fight. That's awesome. And like just fun. And
that also has like the best bit of performance from Jackman in that whole movie, where he just like fucking rails into Wade and just like tears him apart as a character on the most basic level.
Right.
Like, and as shallow as this movie could be on paper,
so
and how it
sort
of comes off just by premise.
But
and as shallow as this movie could come off, there is some genuine stuff for Jackman to chew on in this.
I think so too. I think that's why he came back. I feel like he knew there was something here a little deeper.
And I also kind of like that even amongst Wolverines, this Wolverine's kind of a loser.
Yes, right. He's kind of the worst.
And
Wolverine.
I like that he's sort of, even if it's not technically the Logan that, you know, we've grown up with in other movies, this is sort of like, this is the platonic ideal Wolverine for us to use as a story point. Like the representation of just like everything we love about Wolverine.
Yes, exactly. The other fight scene that I think really is impressive is the Deadpool Wolverine versus the Deadpools. I feel like, yes, they all regenerate, so like it's sort of a like a nothing happening there, but in reality it's such a great scene. It's so well done. The one wide shot as they move forward, kind of reminiscent of Old Boy, and I feel like, and you know, Daredevil also references that, and you know, you could also say the Raid does that too. So it's like they're all referencing Old Boy, but I feel like this takes it in a fun, different way, and I think that it
Mhm.
really plays well. I did like all the Deadpools. I thought that was going to be kind of dumb, like to have all the Deadpools show up, because it's like, it is his multiverse movie, so of course more Deadpools had to show up. But they kind of just played it as like, here he goes, he's gonna fight them all, like sort of thing, and I think
Yeah.
that worked.
It's a better way to write your way around, like, damn, we need nameless goons to fight just so we can
Yes.
have nameless goons to fight and show off some cool action.
I-
And it's a better way to do it than to just have nameless goons. Like, oh, what if there are a bunch of Deadpools? That's at least mixes it up.
Right, and I think that the actors of all the Deadpools are a lot of fun. I feel like that might be some of the best cameos in the whole movie, because other than, we haven't brought up Johnny Storm. I feel like that might be one of the funniest cameos in this fucking movie. Is that I was right there with Deadpool being like, oh my god, they're gonna do like some off-brand Captain America here, like I was like, oh shit. And then for it to be Johnny fucking Storm, I was like, holy shit. Like I literally was like dying in the theater.
I had friends say they knew it was Johnny Storm right off the bat. That didn't cross my mind. They actually got me with that.
Yeah,
at first what I thought they were going to do was going to have, because the first hint that it might not be Cap is like him kind of swearing and being kind of a douche. But my mind didn't go Johnny Storm. My mind went, it's like, oh, are we gonna do like a douchey sort of like wink wink ultimate Captain America here? Because that'd be really funny.
That would be funny. And there was tons of thoughts that ran through my mind when he first showed up on screen. I was like, it could just be a Captain America, a captain for another country, like that's what they're gonna do, or something like that. And it was way funnier to have a very pissed off Johnny Storm. I thought that was very great. And even better that Pyro just takes him out and then he just bounces off shit and falls to the ground. Kind of reminiscent of the first Deadpool movie, and you're like, that's amazing. Like that was fucking funny.
And it has that very comic book aspect of just like, whenever they pin characters against each other, just like, who would win in a fight, Pyro or the Human Torch? It's just like, well, Pyro can just manipulate flame, so he could just pull the flame away, dude.
Yeah,
duh.
Right, flame off, like, and it's done. I thought that was very comic booky and fun there. But I think that those are some of the best cameos there. But I feel like the Deadpool cameos are quite astounding in a lot of ways. So you have Blake Lively as Lady Deadpool, which I was like,
I figured as soon as they showed like Lady Deadpool like in the marketing stuff, I'm like, that's probably Blake Lively.
It's probably Blake Lively, and especially when she showed up to the premiere in her like red jumpsuit that she was wearing there. To me, that was like, yeah, she's Lady Deadpool, and it's her being like, look at my, like, this is my elegant Lady Deadpool dress, when she did that at the premiere. Peggy the dog as Dogpool was fucking hilarious. You got to give it there. I did think it was funny that Ryan Reynolds used his own daughter as Kidpool. I thought that was pretty good. Wild, that's Nathan Fillion as Headpool. That is, I was like, are you
zombie
shitting
Deadpool.
Me? I was like, are you shitting me? Like, that is crazy. When he started talking, I was like, is that fucking Nathan Fillion? It was like my first thought I was like,
I mean, that's always my reaction anytime Nathan Fillion is doing a voice and stuff. It's like, that fucking Nathan Fillion. I love Nathan Fillion.
I love Nathan Fillion. Matthew McConaughey as Cowboy Deadpool is like, I was like, are you like, that feels like a Star Wars thing where like they had Daniel Craig as one of the stormtroopers. You're just like,
stormtroopers, what? Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, what the fuck?
The only thing, like we even had like Deadpool 2099. I'm like, damn, that's a real deep cut. Right? I don't think anyone remembers Deadpool 2099 amongst like the 2099 like sub brand of characters.
Right? Like shit.
The only one I felt was missing, I'm like, damn, the only thing we were missing was Evil Deadpool from the end of Daniel Way's run.
Yes, right?
Like, the Deadpool that's made up of all of like Deadpool's leftover parts.
That would have been cool. I did like that there was Welsh Pool, who's played by a famous soccer player. They have Canada Pool, that's played by Alex Kirshkuff, which is like the guy who did stunts for Deadpool in pretty much everything. Like he is the Deadpool you see for stunts throughout pretty much all the X-Men movies, Deadpool movies, like, so it's cool that he got like a spot there. You're like, that's fucking sick. But I think that Deadpool scene is a lot of fun and adds a lot to this movie. You're kind of like, all right. Now, speaking of the kind of cameos, but like actors in the movie, what did you think of Cassandra Nova? Because I know you've read the comics with Cassandra Nova in it, and
Yes.
I've read,
in fact,
stuff she's in, but never there it is, but never like
for those
the
of you watching the video version of the podcast, I'm holding up the new X-Men omnibus, which is the entire Grant Morrison run on the new X-Men in one big fucking phone book.
Huge. Grant kept writing, just kept going.
And
but
I recently went through the entire run again because X-Men 97 was pulling elements from that run. It's moving beyond just like the stuff from the 80s and 90s, which is cool. And so it made me be like, well, I've had that fucking tome on my shelf for the longest time. I should actually dive into it so I can reread it again. And I did. And I think in terms of demeanor and menace and even like some like power set stuff, I think Emma Corrin does a really good job playing Cassandra Nova. Like they have like this genuine sort of menace while they obviously don't go too weird with it, because Cassandra Nova's whole deal is fucking weird.
But I do think that they do a great job of like capturing that weird with her reading people's minds with the fingers in their face. I think that effect came out so good. Like it looks so good, especially when she does the paradox and then drags him around with it. I thought that was, even the
stuff like with the hand with like the face and stuff. I'm like, oh, that is straight out of the books. Right? Although it is funny, and there has been like this ongoing joke of like MCU hates old women because we keep making all like the old crone like Marvel characters like young and hot.
All of them. It's like even Madam Web, it's like she's known as like an old woman, and now we have Dakota Johnson. You're just like,
we have to make young and hot. Gotta do young and hot.
Gotta do it.
And this is because I haven't watched The Crown, this is the first thing I've seen Emma Corrin in, even though I know that they play Princess Diana on The Crown, or like the young Princess Diana.
I haven't gotten that far into The Crown. I've done 1 or 2 seasons, but I haven't gotten to Princess Diana. I'm not sure which season.
They play Princess Diana like younger, and then in the subsequent season, it's Elizabeth Debicki who plays her older.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the only. So this is the first thing I've seen them in. And it's a great first impression. It's just the young and hot thing just continues to make me laugh.
You're just like, wait a minute. What else has she been in? She did The Policeman with Harry Styles and
they did
Grief, and The Crown, and I guess she was in Pennyworth, but I'm not fucking watching that. You can't catch me watching that. You okay over there?
Yeah, someone's knocking on the door.
But and the other one she's known for is something called Lady Chatterley's Lover, which I have not seen, but it does look pretty interesting. I might Mary might like that. Might have to watch that one. But I think she was a good villain. I just think she's not the real villain here, and like she's just kind of used as like a force, and I think that works well. But it's definitely like interesting to like kind of undercut her with paradox, like it's just like, ooh, like, but I think her like pulling apart Johnny Storm was fucking sick. And like, you're like, all right.
Frank.
Yes.
Let's have a little pause here just because they're going to keep fucking knocking and bothering me.
Okay. A little pause. Yeah. So I will just talk about that. I think that the effect of Johnny Storm falling apart into a blood bag was not great. I will say that's the one special effects that I did not like. I think that was kind of poorly done. I think it's a cool idea. I just don't think it looked good. But overall, I will say the special effects in this movie are quite good and well done and worth like the big budget that this movie has, because I think that, we get a lot of MCU movies where they have these gigantic budgets and then look like ass. And you're just like, why? So I feel like Deadpool it kind of rekindles that like good CGI that Marvel is known for, and they don't want to be known for like Thor, the floating kid head, and lots of other just like weird and questionable uh, FX that have happened throughout the Marvel universe. Um, I think they did a good job of being like, hey, yeah, like this looks great the whole time. Now, I mean, you got to give credit to Deadpool's suit. It just looks great. Like it doesn't matter what variation of it is. It really is quite good. I'll wait till the Sean to talk about Wolverine's suit, but I did love it. So it I do think it's funny that like James Mangold, the director of Logan, was consulted on this movie to make sure that like it did not interfere with his movie because they didn't want to disrespect Logan. And I think that they wanted to disrespect it, but not in like a ruin that movie, which I think that they do a good job of not. I feel like that movie still stands and it still does well and doesn't feel negated by Deadpool and Wolverine. Which I do think it's funny that it is called Deadpool and Wolverine. I guess in interviews he said that it was just supposed to be called Deadpool and Friend, and they were just gonna just kind of ride it out until you saw Wolverine, like just kind of doing it until they couldn't. But it feels like Ryan Reynolds had a lot of ideas of what this movie could be, because he talked about that he wanted this movie to be called.
You might have to edit around that.
No, that's okay. I tried to talk throughout the whole thing, and I was just talking that they did name this movie beforehand, because there was two things they tried to do before this movie came out. They called it Alpha Cop, which was supposed to be two
I heard about
buddies, in brains, and then like halfway through the movie it would just be Deadpool, like 20 minutes in, which I think is kind of a funny idea, but I think it's flown.
Fun. I'm not sure how well it would have done for the box office, just because you need to drum up the hype for it.
Yeah, and I think that's why they shut it down.
I do also miss experimental shit like that.
Yes. I do think it was funny that after that, they just were, until the Super Bowl, they just called this movie Deadpool and Friend. So they weren't calling it and Wolverine. They were just calling it and Friend, which I guess right up till the Super Bowl, they were like, yeah. And then they sent it to the studio, and the studio was like, yeah, it's fucking stupid. Just call it Deadpool and Wolverine. And they were like, shit. You're just like, yeah, that's fair.
The only thing I wish is that I wish they gave Wolverine like his actual style, like logo he has in his own comics, as opposed to Wolverine also being in like the Deadpool font.
Yeah, it would have been more comic booky, being like team, like it's kind of slamming them together.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying while you were gone, I was saying I do think that this is a high mark for good CGI in the Marvel universe. I think there's a lot of good CGI moments in this movie. When you can look back on Black Widow or the floating head in Thor, and like lots of other just bad CGI moments that Marvel has kind of badly got a reputation for. And here, the only bad effects I would say is, and I did like the moment, but I think that the FX isn't great, is the pulling Johnny Storm apart. I think it's a cool moment, but he doesn't look perfect, like it doesn't look right. And it falls apart, and it just kind of looks like CGI bones on the floor instead of like real.
Yeah.
Like
there's also a bit like at the end of that big like old boy action sequence where they jump out of the bus and they have like their big like pose moment when they land, you could tell that Hugh Jackman is completely CGI, and he's kind of idling like he's a video game character. He's just doing like this.
He's doing and I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, what the fuck, But
I do like that they
I will say it's a lot better CGI here in this movie.
I do like movement wise. He's doing more like comic booky Wolverine stuff. Like he's really low to the ground and like scampering around like a little goblin sometimes.
I like that though, like especially when they're starting to fight in the or it's like in the middle of the fight of them fighting inside the van, the Honda Odyssey. They he gets on the ground and crawls at him, and I fucking came in my pants the minute he did that. I was like, yes, that's fucking amazing, you know, like, because like that is, you know, even if you grew up watching the cartoons or you just read the comics, Wolverine fucking crawls, you know, like he fucking gets on his hands and legs and runs, you know, like
he's a little beast man.
And I feel like they captured that a little bit more here, and I really did enjoy that. Like, it was just like, okay, he's moving like Wolverine here instead of Bryan Singer being like, move like a person, not a comic book character. And you're like, we're making a comic book movie, you know, like what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I think it's wild that on the set of the first X-Men movies, they were like, no, you can't read comics. Like, do not read the X-Men comics. I don't want you reading the X-Men comics. And you're like, first off, disrespectful. First off, disrespectful.
For
Two,
sure.
What the fuck? Like that's so weird.
Also not unexpected from a movie from the year 2000.
Yeah.
But also we have to remember that this was like this was post Batman and Robin.
Yeah, right.
So even though we joked that like Batman and Robin was
like
the death of comic book movies, even though Blade came out a year later, it's still in that like, okay, what worked was dark, black leather, and mostly night shoots, and we just keep it at that. We don't want to go too comic booky because that's what happened with Batman and Robin. Just like that was a separate issue, but sure.
Yeah, you're like, no, that went more the 1960s TV show more than it went comic books, I would say.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's in the same way that like if a single female superhero movie doesn't do well, they're just like, it's just people just don't want to see female superhero movies.
And you're like,
no, they just don't want to see shit.
Yeah, that's really it. Because I would say my one argument for the Miss Marvel movie is like, and the what was the sequel? What's the
Captain Marvel and the Marvels?
The Marvels. What I don't like about that is what they've kind of like. I love Carol Danvers. I think that character is fantastic. What they do with that character, nothing. Fucking nothing. You know, like they don't do anything cool with it. They don't make any. Carol Danvers is known for her bold decisions. You know, like she's like Captain America, where it's like some of the big character moments of her is making a bold fucking decision that maybe other characters don't like. And they just don't do shit with that here, you know, like they don't make shit. They're kind of like, she's a captain in demeanor only than like captain as a person. And I feel like that's the reason why people aren't excited for that character, you know, like it's just not the same.
Yeah, that was my thing that I always had to reiterate back when that first movie came out. It's just like, I've always liked Carol Danvers, especially like I was introduced to her because of X-Men stuff.
Right.
And it's one of those things where like, she has no dimension in the MCU. It feels like she's just there for like little girls to project onto.
Please don't get us wrong in that I want a fully female-led like comic book movie. Absolutely. The Marvels is not it, and neither was Captain Marvel. You know, like I feel like they both missed the mark and pretty early missed the mark. Like you don't need to finish the fucking movie to be like, that's bad. You know, like this is not a, you know, like even if you add more Marvels, it doesn't make it more fun if they all don't do anything, you know, like.
And the lesson from that isn't to be like, well, I guess these female-led superhero movies don't work. Right. As opposed to like the multitude of male-led superhero movies that are just allowed to fail and then constantly reboot and try again. Yeah,
you know, you're just like, fuck, there's so many, and we never go, well, you can't have a male-led superhero.
This is representative of the entire sex. No more.
No more. Like, it's fucking insane. But to bring it back to the movie, I think that that Deadpool Wolverine, I feel like it's a lot of fan service, a lot of love. Especially almost more than you would think for the Fox movies, you know, like it's almost like they really do love the Fox movies here. Like, I think that's because they made them, you know, like,
they made them. Like we forget that, like we praise the MCU so much, but you forget like where this stuff started. Yeah. There is no MCU without Blade. There is no MCU without those first like attempts like the X-Men movies, which was the first one that kind of found success and had a long running franchise. Right. Like the fact that those movies ran for so long, like even with the peaks and valleys, without having a hard reboot is still impressive. Hugh Jackman having that record for like consecutively playing the character without being replaced is impressive. And we forget that like Kevin Feige as a producer got his start on the X-Men movies before Marvel Studios was even a thing.
Mm-hmm. That's why I brought up the comic book thing before, but Kevin Feige's credited as giving Hugh Jackman Wolverine comics on the set of X-Men to be like, this is what he's like, you know, like, and first off, why would you take a role without reading the fucking comics? But, you know, money's money, I guess. So you take the role,
I disagree. An actor is there to act. They don't need to be a fan to know.
Yeah, but yes and no. I feel like, yes, it's a job. They're doing a job. Like, you know, like you need to make money. But I do feel like when you're going into a role that has so many fans of it, you should check out what makes it that, or you get makes it so, or you get fucking Halo. You know, like it's like season 2 may have been better because they fired the people who made the bad decisions in the first season, but you can't save a sinking ship that's got a huge hole in it. And by a huge hole, I mean so many Master Chief ass shots and a helmet shot. You know, like I never thought I would say.
Here's the thing: that's on the production team standpoint. That's not on the actors.
Yes, true. But I feel like the actor himself was defending the helmet being taken off, and you're just like, buddy, if you played these video games one time, you'd be like, hell no, I'm never fucking taking this helmet off. You can't make me.
But that's just typical actor defending their paycheck.
Yeah, I will say it's like a very Henry Cavill, where it's like he realized that The Witcher was doing weird things and not sticking to the source material and not doing anything from the games, you know, like, and just kind of were doing their own thing. And that's why he stepped away. I feel like, you know, some people have some integrity like that, where they're just like, this is fucked. You know,
but I feel like this like fan entitlement is like every actor needs to be that. They need to know the source material. They need to be fans. You need to be a fan of something to be able to work on it. It's just like, no, not even remotely true.
Yeah, I do think that with giant fandoms attached to things, you should check out why they're fans. I feel like you're making a property, you should know why people are into that property. You know, like I feel like that's how I brought up that, but you could also point at Uncharted. It's like if you had played those games, anybody on the set, you wouldn't fucking make the choices you did. You know, like you would. It's like it's very just Hollywood being like, okay, so we have this property, let's use it, you know, like, and I've seen clips of this game, I can remake that clip from this game, instead of being like, what made this fucking work and actually made it popular, you know, like that's, I feel like that's the big thing, is that people are missing that, like, why did this get big and popular? Why are you working on this for millions of dollars? You know, like, what, it's like you need to know that, instead of being like, well, here's the money, you know, like, and you're just like, that's fine, you know, for somebody like Harrison Ford, who's like, yeah, I'll act stupid for money, you know, like, but at the same time, even he kind of understands who Red Hulk is, you know, like, and what he's doing there, you know, like, more than the average bear, you know, like, and I feel like that's the difference, you know, like, is like, yeah, he can make his money, but he still knows what he's trying to accomplish there with Thunder Ross there and everything.
But that's even assuming like they want to go that route.
True,
because these are still all adaptations at the end of the day. You think Wesley Snipes was fucking reading Blade comics when he made it's like when they made Blade? No, that movie completely reinvented that character because no one cared.
No one cares. But I feel like, you know, you get great things like, you know, Batman the Animated Series, when you bring fans in to work on the property, you know, like, you know, you get Bruce Timm, who's actually working on, you know, Batman comics, and then he's doing the show, and you're kind of like, yeah, that's the difference. That's the jump, you know, like, and that's why I have a little bit of hope for Green Lantern, but we'll see.
On the same token, you can also get great things that feel wholly themselves from people who are kind of marginal fans at best, all of the Nolan movies.
True. And I feel like, you know, you have Jeff Johns writing the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, and that was fucking bad, you know, like it's like, so you have one of the greatest Green Lantern writers of all time, and he still fucks up the movie, you know, like, and like,
although from what I hear, like, you know, script to screen, there were a lot of behind the scenes
changes.
muddling that messed with that.
Yeah.
It's always never the right way to like criticize the script or the screenwriter based on like the amount of like variables that happen in the production.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to criticize a screenwriter, I feel like, with these type of adaptions, because like, sure, they may have done a great job on the original script, but that does not mean that happened on screen, you know, like that's not exactly, you know, it takes a lot of ingredients to get to that point. So it's like, you know, lots of things you're like, is that the script or is that the people doing it, you know, like that's a hard thing to choose, you
that's
know?
how Frank Darabont felt about the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein, because he wrote that. He's just like, best script I ever wrote, worst movie that ever got made from what I wrote.
Yeah, and it's like, and he's been scarred so much that's the reason why he left Walking Dead, is they like kind of took it away from him, and he was like, no, I'm fucking leaving, you know, like it's like Darabont knew when he's not in control, they just fucking run with it, and he's just like, okay, never mind, I'm not doing that, you know, like fuck that, you know, like, and then but still, what are we on, like the 5th show for Walking Dead, you know, like I guess, you know, like this still happens, you know, still people are watching it, so like what can I say?
It's like AMC's only fucking thing now. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. They're like, we could just turn this into our one thing we do, and you're like, okay, like you're like, all right. Except, do they? I was already sick
of zombies before the show started.
Do they do Yellowstone, or is that some other network? Is that Stars?
Yellowstone is Paramount, I think.
Paramount, is it? Yes,
I forget, and then I forget like what cable network they put it on, because it's a big boomer show, so it definitely has a cable broadcast.
It's exactly what that show is. It's just a big boomer show. It's like I like the actors in it. I'm just like, yeah, this is for the boomers, you know, like kind of like how his show, what was his movie that just came out that bombed? Horizon. It's supposed to be the start of his gigantic epic 3-part, maybe 4-part epic, and it did terribly, like so bad. I wonder if IMDb says how much it made, but it did not do well. Okay, so its budget was $100,000. Opening weekend it made $11,000. Holy shit.
That's bad.
That's bad.
But I'm also not surprised.
Worldwide 33,000. So fucking bad. You know, like,
I'm also not surprised. Like, I like Kevin Costner's like directorial stuff, like Dances with Wolves, but you can barely convince people to go see a 2-hour movie, let alone a fucking like 3 to 4 hour Western.
That's gonna be
something that's not a big tentpole. Because of FOMO, they're afraid that they're going to miss out and not be able to talk about it with people.
Definitely one of those movies that we're going to see an article in a couple months being like, Horizon did terrible in theaters, but is crushing on Netflix now that it's there. You know, like they do with so many fucking movies. They're like, this 2023 disaster is doing extremely well on Netflix. You're like, yeah, because people don't have anything to watch on Netflix, so they're like, fucking fine.
Which is great, but it also doesn't really help anyone.
Yeah,
it's not like anyone's getting residuals because of the streaming numbers on Netflix, which they never reveal anyway.
You're just like,
that used to be the difference. Like, you could recoup your costs on home media. There are plenty of movies that was basically Kevin Smith's career for like most of the time, where it's like it didn't do well at the box office, but it always had its market on home video. It found its fan base, it found its audience, and was able to pretty much recoup its costs and make a profit because of that. But now because we've emphasized home media less and less over the years, now it's just like, unless it does well in that like very limited time in theaters, you're just kind of fucked.
I am excited for what's his next movie called? He's producing it. I don't think he's directing it. What is that one called with the movie theater one that's coming out? Kevin Smith.
Oh, the 4:30 movie, something like that.
Something like that. I think that could be fun. I hope it's not just a self-referential sort of thing, but I think that it could be really good. I'll have to wait and see. Is basically it. But I think that, back to the point is Wolverine and Deadpool. I think that this is a very standalone movie. You will not be, like, I don't think other than other Deadpool movies will be referencing it. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
think that
is
this is
and it
very
isn't.
insular.
Like you can watch it not knowing much, but if you know anything about like the comic book movie like slate and industry for like the last 20 years, it makes it much funnier.
Yes. I will say, Mary went with me, and so my mom and my brother, and like, it's funny because Mary doesn't know too much about Deadpool and Wolverine, so she came out being like, so why can they always regenerate? And I was just like, that's their powers. I was like, wait, and she's like, well, that kind of kills the whole fight scenes with them. I'm like, or it just makes it fun. Like it's like like that they just but she was very confused why Nice Pool did not regenerate, and that's what threw her off. Was like, she was like, why doesn't, so he died but everyone else regenerates? And I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of the weird joke there, is that like Nice Pool doesn't regenerate, like it's
that's
like,
that multiversal one. Someone got the short end of the stick.
Yeah. I did think Nice Pool was very funny. I thought that was a very good joke. I was like, okay,
yeah,
this is insane.
I can tap on the fourth wall too. Looks at camera, the proposal. Is that what you think I do?
I thought that was so good. I fucking died there when he's like, the proposal. Like, that's
since we haven't really talked about it, since we were talking about we talked about the multiversal, like seeing all the different Wolverines at the beginning. Seeing it in motion, how'd you feel about this costume?
Okay, yeah.
After it took decades to get Hugh Jackman in the goddamn suit.
When you were gone, and then I stopped myself. I was like, no, wait, hold on, because I think Deadpool suit has always looked good. I think that even since Deadpool 1, this suit is maybe one of the best superhero suits we have. Like, it is just it's an amazing suit. So to make Wolverine and kind of Deadpool it up, I think that they did a good job. And seeing it in motion, it looks and moves a lot better than it does when you freeze frame it. Because I feel like the horns,
all the
on the head,
set photos and stuff we saw before.
Yeah, it's like the horns on the head, when it's not moving, it kind of looks like too much. But then when he is moving, you're like, oh, that's perfect. Like when he's in motion, it fits, it makes sense. It's just when you're seeing it from like not the angle you're supposed to, you're kind of like, it's sort of strange, like. But I think overall, when he's fighting, when he's moving it, you're like, okay, and it looks great.
I think the proportions are also just a little off because they had the sleeves. Yes. And then they got rid of the sleeves, but because they got rid of the sleeves, they got rid of the shoulder pads too. And you're like, oh no, you're kind of fucking with his proportions of his silhouette when you get rid of the shoulder pads too, and it makes the mask like seem a little too big.
Yes, I think that might be
like all these design choices are intentional.
Yes,
but here's a question, because I've been hearing this since the first Deadpool movie came out. When we get to Brave and the Bold, do you want a Batman cowl with those style wide eyes?
I mean, I like it, like is my thing is I think that Deadpool looks perfect, like, sure, you can't see some emotion in the eyes, but it looks great, like, and you can emote with the bottom half of your face really well, like, and I feel like
or just with your body language.
Right? It's like there's plenty of like Batman scenes, even in the animated series, where you don't see their eyes, but you can tell what Batman's thinking. Like his eyes aren't changing, but you're like, I know what that man's thinking, like, and I feel like they do that here. It's like Deadpool's wearing the mask, Paradox is talking to him, saying he's going to destroy the universe. And even though you can't see his face per se, you can tell he's pissed off. And everything Paradox is saying is fucked up to him, and that's like the whole like that's the argument right there, is that like Deadpool is able to emote even with the mask on, like, and it's able to work. I do think these eyes look really good.
I am glad, and I'm sure part of this is just the benefit of I either keep the mask on, which is just easy to put on my face, or I have to go through the burn makeup process in the chair for a little bit. So it's just easier to just put the mask on. So I'm glad that there was that benefit, because we have Ryan Reynolds keeping that fucking mask on, which always drives me crazy for any other adaptation. Even here, like, I knew from the jump, I'm like, oh man, we're only going to get the Wolverine cow for a little bit.
Yeah,
and sure, it's cool that it kind of builds up to it, and that's a cool moment when he does finally put it on. But it's just like, God damn it, keep the fucking mask on.
Yeah, keep the mask on. Like, God damn it. Like, they wouldn't just be walking around without it, you know? I mean, Wolverine sort of does in a lot of his works, but like, you're like, come on, put the mask on. You're like, let's do it. I do think he looks great in this. I think Hugh Jackman is surprisingly still fantastic at all the action and looks great on screen. I think the reason why you see this is because Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, and they deliver the whole time. I feel like that's the number one thing, is that they're funny together. It works well as that straight man, wacky guy sort of dynamic. That's it's the reason why you love them together, and it works really well. I think overall it's a surprising movie, because it could have been nothing burger of a movie, and I think there's some people who are complaining it's a nothing burger. I feel like there's a lot of fun to be had, and that's something that a lot of movies are missing nowadays. Just having some goddamn fun.
I still said it is a member berry pie of a movie.
What the fuck is a member berry?
Okay. You're the only person I've ever had to explain this, Frank. Watch more South Park.
I'm sorry, I don't.
All right, let me give you the context.
You said it to me, and I was like, "What the fuck is a member berry?" Like, I was like, "Wait a minute."
It's fucking Fede Alvarez, who's directing Alien Romulus, literally made a member berry joke about his movie. It's just like, we have references and stuff and like Easter eggs for the original movies, but you don't want to just make a member berry movie.
Yes.
So let me explain what member berries are. There was a South Park episode that was basically all about nostalgia, in which they come out with this new snack called member berries, which is basically like a little thing of grapes that talk. And what they do is every time you eat them, they coax you into thinking about the past. They're just like, hey, you remember Star Wars? You remember Ghostbusters? And they're just like, oh yeah, I do remember that. And so they're just literally eating nostalgia. And the idea is over the course of the episodes, the member berries actually go sour because they start to talk about, oh, it wasn't all just like sunshine and rainbows and all the fun stuff. You remember there was also the fucked up stuff about the past.
Yeah.
So they go from like, you remember Chewbacca? And they eventually start saying fucked up shit like, remember when marriage was between a man and a woman? You're like, what the fuck?
What the fuck? You're like, what the shit? Oh,
yeah, funny. So that's the idea of just eating nostalgia with no depth. That's why it's such a good metaphor and people use it a lot.
And I do think that it works for explaining this movie, is that yes, it's a lot of you remember this? This is fun, right? But I do think that that's sort of what's going on here, is it's fun without being too vapid. Without being too shallow.
Again, I like that they focused on underdog characters from kind of forgotten sub-franchises from different studios in a pre-MCU world, as opposed to doing the obvious stuff just give us the Tom Cruise Iron Man, give us Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man again.
I do think that going back to the stakes thing is that No Way Home kind of already did the if we don't do this, all our universes end, sort of thing. And that is my my real issue with this movie, is that the stakes are very similar to that, which is also very similar to Into the Spider-Verse, which is also very similar to a lot of what the MCU is up to. And I'm a little worried that we've kind of hit the end of the stakes. There's no higher stakes than the universe is ending.
That's sort of the trouble when you open up Pandora's box that is multiversal storytelling.
Yeah, it's kind of it is, to me, it's the same problem as the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor, I love the Anti-Monitor. I think he's one of the best villains of all time. I don't know when they'll be able to actually use him in a DCU movie, but the Anti-Monitor is the ultimate threat. So to try to upstage the Anti-Monitor since then has been hard for DC Comics. So it's they all have to find new different ways. But again, my argument against my own argument in my head against that is that comics have to have events. and you have to raise the stakes and make new stakes every event. And like, yes, some of the events may be similar in a lot of ways, but overall,
there's also the
like,
sense
that's
of
supposed to happen. Like,
well, there's also the sense in storytelling that it doesn't necessarily have to be bigger to be better.
yes, exactly, because it could just
Like
be
someone's favorite event could be Civil War, which on paper, it's not as big as like Infinity Gauntlet or anything, but it might be someone's favorite event just because it's specific and it's more personal to characters.
Yeah, I, as I'm not the biggest Marvel guy per se, I'm more of a DC guy. You can't tell from.
I could even compare that to the DC side. Look at Justice League. None of the best episodes of like the Justice League cartoon are like the big dark side is gonna fuck shit up. It's more like the personal stuff. The best season finale of that whole show is season 2, and it's just about a Thanagarian invasion. It's not about the Anti-Monitor. It's not about Darkseid, but that's the best finale because it's more personable to the characters. It's all about like, oh shit, what is this gonna mean for Shira and John?
Exactly. And I think that maybe we need to get back to that instead of just like the universe is fucking gonna end, like. I think they tried to add those stakes with being like, here's his family and he just wants to get back to his family. But like throwing in the universe stopping, you're just kind of like, all right. I get it. Now let's find something else, like let's keep it personal and more to it. Because like you said,
think about,
go ahead.
Same thing with like, think about the Guardians trilogy. If you want to talk about in terms of scale of like a threat, then you kind of don't get bigger than like Ego or Ronin. Like Volume 3 is actually much smaller if you actually think about it in terms of scale. Like it's not really about like the end of like the universe or anything, but it's about this one specific person who has a tie to Rocket's past.
Yeah, and like sure he's a threat, but he's not ending the universe or anything like that, or becoming a Thanos.
He's not going to get an Infinity Stone like Ronin. He's not going to like terraform all the planets like Ego. He's just conniving and specific and evil.
And I think this is an important thing to talk about because we just revealed Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. So, how do you beat out Thanos? And the comics have done it where Doom shows up and he just kills Thanos in one punch. And like, I think that might be the way to go, to be like, yo, Thanos ain't shit compared to Dr. Doom, like sort of thing. But I think they might have to, kill Kang is my thing.
Oh,
it's like
might?
Yeah, like it's like
Kang's gonna get annihilated and like nuked immediately.
Yes, I think that's so. Like you could kill Thanos to show how much of a threat this guy is. Dr. Doom is. But I do think the better way to show he's a threat and to like tie all the MCU together is bring Jonathan Majors back just to die at the beginning of this Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday, because like
I doubt they'll do it.
I doubt they'll do it,
but it's going to be fun to see how they try and write around it.
Yeah,
to just be like, what happened to Kang? Don't worry, don't think about it.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Big threat. We had 2 movies that were leading up to him, but don't think about it.
Yeah, and Loki as well. It does. It does suck to have to, reinvent the wheel on the fly, but this is also kind of what happens when you reveal your entire slate before it's happened.
Exactly.
So when something rocks the boat, like a Jonathan Majors type situation, especially when you've banked it on an entire actor, which was cool for like an acting challenge, but all the Kang variants in the comics look completely different. You could have just had different actors.
Right.
You want to pick the most recastable main villain of all time, you could have picked Kang. You could have just recast and moved on. Stop being afraid of recasting.
Yeah. Especially because we're getting Robert Downey Jr. as Doom. It's like, yes, guys. Yeah, I do. I love Robert Downey Jr. And yes, is he never going to reveal his face in the as Dr. Doom? Yes, he's never going to. So it's just the voice of Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, that might be good.
We'll see.
Like,
I don't trust them. I don't trust actors who get paid too much to not want to show their fucking face.
Yeah, I do think they might be like, oh my God, he's a multiversal Tony that's gone bad. Like that's, but to me that, yeah, exactly. That's like moment for me. It's just kind of like it's too easy. It's too like they think it's got emotional depth. It does not. You know, like
And I know non-comic book readers love to like show up to like, well, what about this? What about this? And they show like the irredeemable Iron Man shit.
Yes.
Or
right.
whatever the adjective for that was. It's like, yeah, but that was more about like Doom getting Stark tech than about Tony becoming Dr. Doom. So don't try to use that as an excuse.
I think that they should just keep a mask the whole time and just play it like he's a different character, whatever, you know, like it's Dr. Doom. And yes, he may sound like Tony, but like he's not, you know, like I feel like that's the best way to do it.
But God, talk about like, even though we made the joke of like MCU's dead, MCU is back, etc. Way to just publicly concede to the public that you've lost the plot after Endgame to be like, RDJ's back, the Russos are back.
I do think so. In my deepest conspiracies, I do think that the Russos being back is a real thing. But I don't think the Robert Downey Jr. thing is real. If I'm going in my deepest conspiracies,
as a filmmaker, misdirect?
Yeah, as a filmmaker, I'm like, oh yeah, they you know picked their biggest star to come back as the villain. That's like the fun of what's going on. That's what's going to make them money. But then my deepest conspiracies are, you're gonna see Robert Downey Jr. as Doom, and then they'll kill him or like he's not the real Doom or something like that, you know, like because it could just be a giant misdirect to try to get you hyped.
But that could also be Cope.
Yes, that could be Cope too. Exactly. It's just like is it a misdirect, or am I just trying to be like they wouldn't be so stupid?
Never underestimate. They could never be so stupid. You sound like me with the Red Hood thing in Arkham Knight. Just like, the Arkham Knight's not Red Hood. It's not Jason Todd. That'd be too obvious and stupid. And that's exactly what it was.
That's the reason why I haven't played Arkham Knight. It's like, I know it's supposed to be an amazing game, but like that shit
gameplay-wise, it's a lot of fun. There's still too much like tank sections with the Batmobile. Like mechanically, it's great. It's good on the open city. Like on a technical standpoint, it is still very impressive, and it still looks great.
Yeah,
it still looks better than like, I mean, you saw the comparisons to it in like Kill the Justice League when that came out. But story-wise, oh boy, you really thought you could handle it with just your in-house writing staff, and thought, nah, we don't need Paul Dini.
We don't need Paul Dini. You're like, you need fucking Paul Dini. Everybody needs a Paul Dini. But okay, we're like a little bit off topic, but on topic. You know, talking about the MCU, but. Overall, I think this is it is a good movie. I think that there's a lot of fun to be had. I know we're nitpicking a little.
So now that you understand the metaphor, it is member berry pie.
Yes,
it's tasty member berry pie. It has a little more flavor than I expected. It's not just, you know, store bought.
Yes,
someone home baked this member berry pie. That's still what it is, but it still tastes good.
Now, is it a better tasting member berry pie than No Way Home? Is the kind of like thing going on here, you know? Like,
I think
it's not meant to be. I don't think.
I think No Way Home has a better emotional core, even if I had my own issues with that.
Yeah,
like that whole thing is kind of predicated on the old, which is why it bugs me when fans are so dismissive of like the Fox X-Men movies. Just like, you can't shit on that
and then still be like,
and then clap because of all the Fox X-Men stuff they put in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yes, like there's so much bad. There's bad X-Men movies at the end there, I feel like, but there's still that beginning strong of the Fox universe that you could still
give it
love.
To No Way Home just because you mentioned stakes. If you want to talk about emotional stakes, which tend to be more important than like scope, because that's the stuff that'll stick with you.
Yeah, they're able to like apply emotional stakes to all the villains here, you know. And I feel like
we have
that's what
Peter
works
losing a person people that are important to him. Like, we leave Peter at such like a sad place at the end of No Way Home, which is good, and it's overdue because the MCU Peter is spoiled and that kid needs some pathos.
Yeah, I am excited for. It's like, it's one of those things that the Spider-Man MCU movies are fun. They're good, but like the one of the things that I love about Peter Parker is his life fucking sucks. Like it's
Yeah,
like everything he does, it goes wrong.
that's
And
why
like,
of the live action movies, Spider-Man 2 is my favorite. I want my fucking Peter Parker to suffer because that's his entire point. This kid must suffer.
suffer. And I think that that's what, like I'm excited for that to kind of come back a little bit. Is like, yeah, let's beat up Spider-Man a little bit, because that's what he does. He gets beat up, he comes back. Like that's the fun of that.
Yeah.
But I think that they kind of already did it with No Way Home, and this is kind of a more fun version of that, like where they're not trying to add all these emotional stakes and everything, but still have an emotional core of like, I could lose my friends and family, and Logan feeling inadequate / not the X-Men that he is, like that. It's like he let the X-Men down, and he like it feels. I do think it's kind of really sad that like the X-Men in his universe were just actually killed by the human threat that was going on, like that they actually showed up and were just racist against mutants and actually killed them, and Wolverine just wasn't there for it, like. And I think that that's sort of interesting, like is actually the humans getting their way in his universe. You're kind of like, ooh, okay, that's fucked up. Like you're just like, Jesus Christ. Like, but I do think this is a good movie. It's fun. See it on the biggest screen possible. Is it going to blow your fucking emotional mind balls back? No. Are you going to walk out being like, oh man, what a deep, deep moment there? Be like, no, but
No,
you'll
but
be
it
like,
does
that was
have
fun.
a bit of a twinkle. It does have more heart than you would expect. Like, I loved that there was like that behind the scenes like little reel of like the behind of like the making of like several of the X-Men movies on the Fox side.
Yeah, I thought that was nice.
Because that's a better goodbye to those movies than like the actual movies could do, because of like the shuffle.
Yeah, I do think the after credit scene is very funny, because I thought that like I was waiting for the extra credit scene being like, okay, so they're gonna introduce that Wolverine is in some other Marvel property now, like that's what I thought was gonna happen. I was like, okay, here we go, like we're gonna see Wolverine doing something else, and for it just to be Chris Evans monologuing that the thing that Deadpool said is, I thought, very funny. I was like, what the fuck? Like, and it's just Chris Evans breaking out his Boston accent a little bit there too. He definitely did not keep that in. He let the Boston accent out a little bit when he was doing the maniacal like monologue.
Yeah,
like,
it makes me miss douchey Chris Evans, because that was what he was typecasted as for the longest time before he got Captain America.
Was just a douchebag, and you're like,
yeah,
I kind of do miss that. You're like, yeah, I mean, Scott Pilgrim's just amazing, so you're just like, and that's why the Scott Pilgrim Saves the Universe was so good. Was that like, takes off, because like you got to see Chris Evans do that character again, and you're just like, okay, that's fun stuff.
But point is, it's a genuinely good time, and it's better than I would have expected.
Yeah. And I would say this is one of those movies that makes you happy you went to the theater. Like it's it's a shared experience with lots of people who are also excited by it. Like, and there's lots of great people reacting to it. Like when you're in the theater with them, it's like I would say see it as soon as possible so you can see it with other people in the theater. So you're not like waiting 3 weeks seeing it in an empty theater, because it's really fun to see how people react to these like fun, drops, like Chris Evans being Johnny Storm. It's like every, like the Wolverine mask coming on for the first time, people reacted. And I feel like that's the magic of a theater, is that like kind of shared experience that's going on. And I feel like I said it when I came out, I was like, I feel like this is a movie that shows you the reason why you go to theaters, like is because it's big, it's bombastic, it's loud, it's fun, it's got great music, you feel good, you have a good time with the people you're with, and sure, it's not so deep, but that doesn't really matter if you had a great time, like. And yeah, that's my like thoughts on that. It's just like, this is a movie to see in theaters, like worth it. But I would say if I had to rate it, it's like an 8 out of 10, you know, like maybe a 7.5. Like it's not gonna, you know, be like, wow, movie of the year, but it is fun. And yes, if in our warp shelf terms, it definitely belongs on your shelf, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't own Deadpool 2 because I don't really like Deadpool 2 as much, but I would get this.
I would get this. I would absolutely buy this and watch this again just for the fun. I might have to go see it again in theaters because it was that much fun, and just worth seeing. And so, but guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Warp Shelf or listening. You can either watch us on YouTube on the Galaxy of Geek YouTube page, or you can listen on any podcast platform you want. Seriously, any podcast platform. If we're not on it, let us know. We'll try to get on it because we're pretty much on everything right at the moment. And I want to thank you guys for coming back and listening, even though it's been a bit. You know, summer, I lost my nana and I started a second job as the TD at the Fisher Cats, and I feel like that's taken up a lot of time, but we want to be back for you guys and for us, because I'm sure we're holding in too much fucking knowledge like at the moment. But we will be back. We're going to be talking, next episode will probably be Caped Crusader, Batman the Caped Crusader, because that just came out this week and we're excited to talk about it. So that might be the next episode that we talk about. And then there's a lot other movies coming out this summer that we're going to be speaking on. But guys, check out the Warp Shelf. You know, just type it in Google. It's pretty much everywhere. You know, hit the buttons down below, make all the things happen. If you want to check out our personal social medias, I am Yep Frank on pretty much everything. I also got Yep Gundam if you're into a little Gundam models. I also have Yep Fish if you're into fishing. You can check out Yep Fish if you're into that.
You're gonna have to trademark the word yup.
Right? Just Yep TM. Like.
And I'm Mod Krika pretty much everywhere, which is mostly just like most active like on Instagram and Threads, just because I have like the media thread thing. I'm up to the 360s now.
Jesus Christ. This might be one of your most productive years. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It helps that I have a lot of free time.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, it's fun. And as far as like other projects and stuff, I'm actually working on something that I've been for a couple weeks now.
Yeah?
I've been thinking about doing a video essay on some comics that I've been trying to talk about.
Okay.
It mostly stems from like, we don't talk about comics as much as I would like to on here. So I'm like, and I've been reading a bunch of books that I would like to have a discussion on. I'm just like, maybe I could do like a video essay or something.
That'd be cool.
So I'm like working on one now. It's dense already. It's like 5,000 words for like a 6-issue book. And it's been fun to write.
That's great. I'm excited for that.
We'll see how that turns out.
Great. But guys, if you want to check those out, please check out all the description down below. It will have all that information. And please keep listening, watching, supporting. It's super helpful. We will do this because we love doing this, but please support, and we will keep coming back for more.
Yeah, let us know you're out there. I mean, we're going to do this anyway, but let us know you're out there.
Let us know you're out there. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great week.
We'll see you next time.
Adios.